No matter what your fantasy record is at this point through the first 3 weeks of the season, your season is not defined by your record. Unless you have James Conner and CeeDee Lamb, then maybe your record might actually just be your record. If you did not lose multiple starting players this weekend, then you are still in the race no matter what your record tells you at this point in fantasy. So many teams can come back from a 1-2 deficit. So many teams can come back from 0-3. It's still so early. So much is to be determined. But the cold hard facts and the cold hard truth that we cannot deny is that these are the most important players to pick up in fantasy for week 4. So let's roll the intro. We talked a lot in the last week's episode about how we should be adding these certain players if they are for some reason available in your leagues. That continues again this week. So Cam Scatterboo, Trey Benson, those names, they must be added at this point. But of course, if you play in a league that those players are already waiver wired and added, as I expect, then you're going to want to go ahead and add Chris Rodriguez as the top priority running back this week on waivers. Chris Rodriguez presumed and took over most of the Washington Commanders' backfield touches. I know Jeremy McNichols scored on a 60-yard touchdown, but his opportunities were slim, and Chris Rodriguez was the guy handling most of the workload. So if available, Chris Rodriguez could be a waiver wire running back, somebody that I said we should be monitoring in the last video, and now that day has come, that time is here. Add Chris Rodriguez if available. I definitely would keep your bid for Chris Rodriguez somewhere close to under 10% of your fab, but someone even less than that. If you're not able to get Chris Rodriguez for maybe 5% of your fab, if available, take a chance on Blake Corum. Maybe someone doesn't have their handcuff in your league, but Blake Corum is presuming more touches than we expected in this LA Rams backfield. So for that reason, if Kyren Williams continues to lose what we thought was his formidable trait, his best trait being that he takes so much of the bulk of the carries for the LA Rams, I think now we're looking at a situation where maybe going forward, Blake Corum takes some of that load off of Kyren Williams, but that doesn't make Kyren Williams no longer a starting running back in fantasy, and this is merely just a add and keep an eye on Blake Corum more than anything else. Briefly, I spoke about Trey Benson. Obviously must be added if he's not in your leagues, but if you weren't able to get either of those two running backs, I would say Emari Demercado if you need to add somebody. I think this is a running back that, yes, is a veteran and knows this scheme well. Maybe will not vulture or take away any touches from Trey Benson, but this could be a guy that's on the field and playing alongside. We're yet to see that. This could be a 60-40 split, or it could be Trey Benson running away with it entirely. Being that there is a chance that Emari Demercado, the veteran, can work his way into this offense, I'm going to add him and monitor him from afar, because if I need a running back and I can't get Chris Rodriguez, I can't get Blake Corum, I need somebody, and Emari Demercado might just be that. Now let's talk the wide receiver position. Tre Tucker had a phenomenal game for the Vegas Raiders, and I do think we should be adding him, and it's not because he's had one big game. He exploded in a few games last year, and this is just a quality boomer bust flex piece that you can leave on your bench. No, you're not going to be able to play him every week, but those spot start weeks where you may need him and he has a good matchup, you can roll him out with confidence. He is a good enough player. Again, I'm probably not going to spend more than, let's say, 8% of my total fab to acquire a Tre Tucker, but if I need a wide receiver, I know exactly what I'm getting. It's a boomer bust flex wide receiver on some weeks where I'm going to need bye week fill-ins. We spoke about this name last week, and although it wasn't a outstanding performance on Sunday Night Football, Wandale Robinson is going to continue to command targets, and if you play in a PPR league and he is available, I think you absolutely do need to pick him up. If you're in a 10-12 man league, definitely go get him. I feel like I have to at least touch on Tyquan Thornton of the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a player that maybe won't have a guaranteed role the entire season, but if you're in need of a wide receiver now, if you're somebody that doesn't have CeeDee Lamb and you don't have anybody else on your bench that you can roll out, Tyquan Thornton is a good add off waiver wires. I just view this more as a short-term option rather than a long-term option. We know Xavier Worthy should be back any week now, and we know with Rashee Rice's 6-game suspension halfway through at this point, we can assume that Tyquan Thornton is going to be good now and maybe in 4 or 5 weeks from now be a thing of the past. I know that Dallas's offense should open up another opportunity for a wide receiver to be a waiver wire add. I don't think at the moment we can go ahead and add any Cowboys wide receiver off waiver wire, but if you wanted to add anybody, I would say go get Jalen Tolbert. This is a guy that probably knows the offense the best out of anybody that you could pick up on your waiver wire from this offense. So I like Jalen Tolbert for that reason. But again, I don't think we're going to see Jalen Tolbert be a viable fantasy play with George Pickens there, with Jake Ferguson commanding so many targets, and the run game actually isn't as bad as it was a year ago. I think at this point, we all know that there aren't any new quarterbacks popping up on the waiver wire. If you did not grab Daniel Jones in the first 3 weeks, I would almost guarantee that he's not available in your leagues anymore. So let's just focus on the tight end position, where we have somebody that is widely owned in a lot of leagues, but still openly available in about 40% of leagues. Hunter Henry at the tight end position provides just like we talked about with Tre Tucker, a boomer bust play at the position. Maybe this is somebody that you can throw into your lineup for maybe one of your guys that has gotten an injury or a bye week that's coming up. This was somebody I had a lot of confidence in going into the season, and the first 2 weeks were definitely leaving more to be desired. This one big week probably won't repeat itself with multiple touchdowns in a game, but we can expect Hunter Henry to get a healthy amount of looks in this offense. And if Drake May is going to continue to get better as a quarterback, then we should be waiting and valuing Hunter Henry's targets and opportunities to get better later down the season. And another player that we should be at least monitoring, if not adding at this point, Isaiah Likely should be making his return soon. And while Zay Flowers has a clear control of this target share in this offense, maybe Isaiah Likely can go back to his role that he was in years past, or at least last year, where he was a guy that saw anywhere between 3 to 5 targets, and maybe one of those receptions, his run after the catch ability, could create some sort of touchdown for this offense. I like Isaiah Likely going forward in fantasy. I think he's just a good football player, but we'll just have to wait and see how many targets he can command in this run-first offense. Now that we lined up and knocked down each position that we should be heading and attacking on the waiver wire, let's talk about some key snap changes and notes going into week 4. Maybe some of these players on your fantasy teams are trending in the upwards direction, or maybe some guys that you're starting are trending downward and we should be worried about playing them in week 4. Let's start with the New England Patriots backfield. This one is a little bit messy and confusing. TreVeyon Henderson and Antonio Gibson should see their snaps increase and their play increase, with Ramondre Stevenson fumbling twice in the game. One thing to keep in mind, did not get a single carry after he fumbled in the red zone in the third quarter. So yes, Ramondre Stevenson did go back on the field after that fumble, but did not get a single carry or reception after that. We've seen a lot of bad social media reports and a lot of negative buzz about TreVeyon Henderson and his ability as a pass protector, somebody who cannot pass block in their offense. And maybe this will provide more opportunities for Antonio Gibson, a potential waiver wire candidate we should be monitoring. But for the time being, I do think we're going to see better games out of TreVeyon Henderson. I think it's just merely a slow start to a rookie season. However, I'm also not saying that TreVeyon Henderson should be somebody we start in our fantasy lineups this week in week 4, but we should be realizing that TreVeyon Henderson is trending up and much better weeks are definitely ahead of us in the near future. Now I want to talk the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and their wide receiver room. Mike Evans currently has a hamstring injury. Chris Godwin may not be back this week in week 4, but likely back in week 5. And with Emeka Egbuka, it's going to be interesting to see who's going to take a bulk of the snaps. If there is no Chris Godwin and no Mike Evans next week, I like Sterling Shepard as a waiver wire add, but only if neither one of those players are available. It's a little early in the week. Who knows if they're available? If you have the roster spot to do so, I would consider adding Sterling Shepard on your roster. But it's going to be interesting to see when Chris Godwin comes back how much of a target share he commands and how long it takes to get prime or 100% of Chris Godwin back into this offense. And lastly, since they were both waiver wire topics and candidates this week, let's talk Trey Benson and Emari Demercado. This could be a situation where both backs split the carries at this point without the bell cow James Conner there. I think it's more likely we see a split 60-40 in favor of Benson, but who really knows at this point which back is going to be used for what? We've seen Trey Benson show explosiveness in terms of pass catching ability, so we know he's probably going to be the guy who's catching passes, but maybe goal to go and in short yardage situations, the veteran Demercado may just be fantasy viable. So we'll have to wait and monitor. Definitely keep an eye on that Thursday night game against the Seahawks, and we'll just see how it goes. That's going to wrap it up for our Week 4 video. This is more of a waiver wire topic video and snap counts. I usually do 2 different videos, but I felt like why not try to condense it into one this week? There weren't that many waiver wire ads. There were a lot of injuries, unfortunately, though, which sucks. But nonetheless, mixing in who's going to play more snaps because of these injuries or who's going to be waiver wire addable because of these injuries is all vital information. So that's why I decided to put these 2 together. If you're new to this channel and you like fantasy football content, feel free to subscribe down below. It costs you nothing and it would make my day 100 times better. If you are already subscribed, Outlier Militia, how we doing out there? Smash that like button for your boy so I know to keep making waiver wire videos and more videos throughout the week for all my fantasy football players out there. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Turtle. This is Outlier Fantasy, and I will see you in the next video. Wow, you stuck to the end of this video? Thank you so much. If you're new here, make sure you check out one of these videos on the screen right now. And don't forget, before you leave, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any fantasy football videos on this channel. And that's all I got for you guys. I'll see you in the next one.